So, Carl, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes,
Totally.
for coming to the peninsula and sharing your thoughts and your feedback, a little bit about your upbringing, what you do for others, which has changed my life, and obviously for the short period that you were the team leader, which we're getting into a little bit about what you've done, and how you've been able to grow as a person and help others and grow in your position here at our company, Keller Williams. I want to give a shout out to Cafe de Casa for our coffee.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So
it's great.
we're
Tastes
caffeinated for this
good.
podcast. And maybe we can start with, tell us about who you are, Carl, where you came from, and we'll go from there.
Okay. How far you want me to go back?
As far as you feel it's appropriate this year.
Okay, so I started my career in business, period, with Colgate-Palmolive. Colgate-Palmolive, as you know, is the manufacturer of Colgate toothpaste, Palmolive dish liquid, Fab laundry detergent, and I worked with them as a sales guy for 12 years. And then I opened up a couple of regions for them as well. And at which point I then made a move over to SC Johnson. I had the opportunity to take a director's position, so it was a nice upward push for me. And SC Johnson, for those, if you don't know, it's they're the makers of Windex and Scrubbing Bubbles and Raid. And I was actually the brand manager for
Very cool.
Glade, the Glade brand, plug-in scented oils, the candles, and the aerosols. And from there, I decided to stay out in the Bay Area and go to work for Del Monte Foods as a director of sales, and opened up our region office here on the West Coast in Pleasanton. Cool. At which point I decided I was kind of tired of the, work for yourself, make a little money, get a lot more responsibility, get a little raise.
Right.
And that that whole scene. So I decided that I wanted to go into business for myself, and real estate was the decision and the choice. And so I literally walked away from my job in 2006, like cold turkey, and started knocking on doors like a crazy guy as the market, as you know, was completely
going down,
tanking.
Right.
So we stayed out here, my wife and my two kids, and I went for it. Just went crazy and started lead generating like a wild machine.
So 2 questions for you. During your corporate career, did you ever hit doors?
Hit doors, as in knocking?
Knocking on doors.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that was it for me, Wilson. I knocked, because when we moved out from Chicago, I didn't know a soul. So I had to start from ground zero, and I knocked on over 9,000 doors in my first year and hammered that farm of 2,100 homes. And in 18 months, took number 1 market share from the 3 top agents, all under one brand,
right,
in 18 months' time. And I was told, you're crazy getting into real estate because it's crashing and this is not the time to do it. You should just stay in your real job,
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, I totally did.
And what are some other limiting beliefs that people instilled onto you or that you had to overcome?
The biggest one, obviously, was that we're in a crash, and the worst time to get into business is when there's no traction and everything is falling. And it was funny, I had this conversation with somebody who was successful in real estate, and the words were, when the merry-go-round slows down, that's when most of the people get off the ride.
Correct.
And people that are going to stay for the next round sit on the horse, and they stay. And then there's other people that are getting on. And so I was actually watching a lot of people get off,
right,
and saying, what's going on? They're like, well, why are you going on? And I'm thinking, I'm here for the ride, the
Correct.
long ride. And it's always up and down, right? It's always fast and slow, fast and slow. So if you're here for the long game, you stay on and
Correct.
you just keep going.
So you sound like a very driven person.
Yes, a little bit.
Years in corporate as a salesperson.
Yep.
Your first year in real estate, you knocked on 9,000 plus doors.
Yep.
And why are you so driven? What keeps you going?
So I'm a real believer, number one, that we get up every day to have purpose. And I'm not saying that in a cliche way. It's the truth. I've got 2 kids, one in college, one going into college. And I'm a believer. My dad passed away when I was a young kid. And so I didn't have the luxury of having that environment where I had a mom and a dad that really planned for my future at a high level. So big goal for me was I'm going to make sure that my kids get the very, very best 18 years under my roof. And then, of course, school. So I don't get up in the morning any day without making sure that I take care of them first and my household, my wife, the dogs, my 2 kids. So I think the drive for me is I attach, and I've learned at an early portion of my career, that I need to attach my activities to my big why. Otherwise, I have a life, and then on this side, I have a job.
Right.
If they're not linked together, then there's no real intelligent activity. So I fund my world through those activities.
Thank you for sharing that.
My drive, yeah.
And you are also a coach?
Yeah. I actually wore my MAPS coach.
That's
My
perfect.
purple for you today.
And
Yes.
I think, obviously, I've learned a lot from you too, because you do have that mentor, that coach mentality. Whenever you talk to someone, you want to leave them better.
Correct.
And for those that struggle with coming from a point of value or coming from a point of wanting to help, what is some feedback that you would give them?
So there's a book, and I won't remember the first name of the gentleman who wrote the book. The last name is Buchanan. Maybe it's Buford Buchanan. He wrote the book Halftime, like as halftime in a football game. And I read the book, and in that book, I read a statement that I'll never forget. And it is, while the first half of your life may be about success, and it clearly was. For me, it was about more money, more success, more power, more leverage, more opportunity.
Right.
While the first half of your life is about success, you should focus on the second half of your life being more about significance. And quite honestly, I don't even see myself in my second half of my life. I feel like I'm still in that first half, and yet I feel like significance really needs to be tied to what you do every day, because there's a lot of people, Wilson, that make a lot of money that unfortunately take the bridge.
Right.
They're not happy.
Correct.
I get a lot of fulfillment out of watching people win, out of helping people win, out of developing successful people, like as if they were a whiteboard.
Right.
And Gary Keller's book, the red book, I know you've read it.
Right.
At least 25 times, right?
Right.
It says on the very front of the book, it's not all about the money. It's about being the very best you can be. And I remember when I was interviewed the very first time by a team leader, having come out of Wall Street companies, I read the statement on that book and I laughed. I was like, yeah, come on. It's all about the money, right?
Right.
When you're working for a Wall Street company, every quarter it's about making the number. It's about finagling the numbers so they're right. And yet I realized the longer and longer I had more of a servant heart, the more money I made.
Right.
Because when you're honest with you're in your zone, or as Gary says, your gift zone, not only do you excel in terms of giving back, you receive back. Right. It's a really awesome model.
Thank you for sharing that. And for those that struggle in finding their why or reaching that point where the second half of their life is about significance, what are some things that you can share that have helped you in terms of on your journey to search for it?
I guess for me, a lot of times we say things like, oh yeah, I have a goal, and my goal is to travel more, or to buy a new car, or to buy an investment property, or it's my family or my kids or whatever. And I believe all that, and it's all true for me as well. The difference is if you don't make it specific enough, or it's not sizzling hot enough, then you really don't identify with that goal.
Right.
For example, if I say I want to travel this year, if I don't have a specific date or a destination in Egypt or Italy or South America or somewhere with dates attached and locations I want to go to, and have that vision painted in my head,
right,
it just becomes a great idea rather than a destination. So my counsel would be, if you're struggling to figure out why you're getting up every morning to do what you do, sit down and have some decompression time and write down the top 3 things that are critical. And I love the word non-negotiable.
Right.
Things that you will absolutely say non-negotiable. Then that becomes your fuel.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, non-negotiable might be, I want $100,000 in the bank towards a college fund in 2 years. Non-negotiable is, I'm going on a 2-week Mediterranean cruise. and I'm bringing this person, this person, this person. These are the ports. This is where I'm going. Yeah. Non-negotiable is what I am not willing to give up to attain it.
Right.
And that's where the accountability piece as a coach comes in. Because if I sit down with you and say, hey, Wilson, here's my stuff. I want you to hold me accountable. My expectation to you now when I don't hit it, and I'm not going to hit everything perfect. You know that, right? I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that.
Stretch goals.
Yeah, and walls where you fall flat on your face and you need to figure out how to move forward. You need someone that can say, hey, whoa, time out, Wilson. You told me you wanted to be in Thailand for 2 weeks.
Right.
Or in Argentina. What happened this week? Why is that not happening? Are you okay letting that go? And that's real accountability.
Right.
If I said to you, hey, don't worry about it, just work at it next week, I'm not really holding you accountable.
Makes sense. And thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that's very helpful for the people that are watching. Mm-hmm. And what are, if you don't mind getting vulnerable, what are some struggles that you've had to overcome? And also, what are some struggles you have right now?
Okay, great. Those are really great questions. Because most of the time we always like to talk
I have
about
mine too, so.
We all like to talk about the win, right? And so the struggles are, the expression, the struggle's real.
Absolutely.
It is real, right?
Absolutely.
So I would say that my initial struggle was quitting a job that was 6 figures, company car, director position, stock options for self-employed.
Right.
Right? You pay for the car, you pay for your benefits, you earn your money, you drive your money, you create your success. And for me, it was all about freedom. 3 big things for me was, number 1, I have to have my independence. Right? Number 2, I want unlimited earnings potential. And number 3, I want to be my own boss. Right. And most of us in any self-employed field are not the best boss they ever had, because we're not good at being accountable.
Absolutely right.
Number 2, we're not making the unlimited income that we hope to make because of number 3. Number 3 is I enjoy all the flexibility of being self-employed, right? So in the early days, I got trapped with the flexibility of, oh, wow, I'm self-employed. I can golf, I can fish, I can travel, I can do this. And meanwhile, watching the checking account go like this. Then all of a sudden, I started to go back to the non-negotiable, which was college fund, kids, trips, pay off my house. And so that kind of shifted for me.
Right.
When I got back into things heavy duty, the biggest mistake that I ever made in my business, and I will say this in the bold room, and you've probably heard it, and I will say that I spent more time hunting. I was a hunter, not a hunter-gatherer.
Right.
If I had every single closing, lead, and contact I ever had in business, I would be running my business from Aruba, probably today, or somewhere else. I was so driven to win. It was all about go get the listing, go get the listing, go get the listing. And I was leaving all of those contacts in the wake of the boat because I was out looking for, and somebody else was collecting.
Right.
And the mistake was I should have been hunting and gathering, hunting and gathering, hunting and gathering. And of course, that's where systems play. If you're not, if you don't have systems, you'll fall flat on your face because you'll hunt, you won't gather. And the gathering is where you get the bulk of your business in the future.
Right.
Challenges today is time.
Right.
It's like, I want to be involved with 1,000 things, right? I'm regional director for Northern California, Hawaii. I have my own team.
Right.
I'm a MAPS coach, Keller Williams University master faculty,
Right.
And then anything else I can get my hands on that's fun, right? So for me, it's about time. Just getting this scheduled was a little bit of a challenge because I wanted to do it. It was important to me to do it. And yet it's, okay, where do I fit this in where it makes sense? And then, of course, family time has to play into that. That's also your 20%. In fact, that's a critical piece of it. Because you can work all you want your whole life, make all kinds of money, be a great boss, and then never know your kids. Not a good idea.
Right.
So managing time, priorities.
Perfect. And you mentioned all these priorities that you have. What would you say if you had to articulate, as you know, we read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. What is your one thing?
My one thing.
Your one thing.
Which one of my one things? I'm just kidding. So I would say that if I were going to pull this out of my PowerPoint to show you how, they don't have the PowerPoint here.
Right.
My one thing, the one thing at the very top is a satisfied, functional, happy family. Now, I know that sounds like that's generic. It is. However, when you go into the 3 strategies, it's provide time first, not even the money. It's being present.
Makes sense.
Present with my family in the years I have. Because we're not guaranteed years, right? I mean, I found out in November that my brother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
I'm sorry.
Came out of nowhere, right? Doctors are like, maybe a year. Whoever plans for that?
No one
We don't
can.
plan for that, right? So being present is number 1 with my family. That contributes to that satisfaction. Number 2 is having the funds and creating the funds so that I can supply my family with all the things that we desire to have. And then number 3, the last piece of that is actually self-time. Because, you can burn yourself out in this business. You can burn yourself out on any business where you're self-employed. If you're burned out, the satisfaction of having the great family and the great life doesn't happen either. Right. So for me, it's those 3 buckets. Then, of course, under each 3 bucket, there are tactics. Right. Calendaring. If you don't calendar your time with your kids, there is no time with your kids. Because especially high school kids, right?
Right.
Because they don't want to be with you a whole lot to begin with. You have to make that happen.
And you have how many kids?
2.
And what grades are they?
I have a 21-year-old that's in college, and I have an 18-year-old that graduates, and that will be in college here soon, shortly.
So you're going to be an empty nester soon.
I almost feel like we're 3/4 of an empty nester because she never comes out of her room anymore, right? That's what happens when you're 18.
Yeah.
We spent all last week visiting college, last weekend.
Good.
Yeah. No, that's going to be fun because it'll be a different phase of enjoying time with Cindy and I.
Right. And we all went through that phase too, ourselves. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all this knowledge. I guess, do you see any themes in the people that you help, the people that you coach, that it's a recurring thing that you could help give some insight to our audience?
Yeah, that's also a super great question. Whenever I teach a class or I coach anything, this is what stands out to me. And it might sound funny. The people that I was just in San Diego doing, working with sellers, whole day thing. The people that sit in the front row are always the people that desire to get the most out of it. In fact, here's a comment from one of the guys, brand new agent, probably 25 years old. He says to me, I didn't know anything about this. He sits down and he says to me, where do you speak more, from the left side or the right side of the room? And I'm like, where's that coming from?
Right.
I said, why is that important? I said, I kind of go back and forth. He goes, where do you probably spend most of your time? And I said, I don't know. I never thought about it. I said, why? He goes, because I want to make sure I'm on that side. And I'm thinking, wow, that was a big insight about his desire to be in the very front row with an open book, with a pad and with a notebook to learn at the highest level. When I'm in a class and people after the class stay and they've got 900 questions,
right,
you know that those are the people that desire to really succeed.
Right.
Because you don't ever learn if you don't ask questions. People that ask questions are looking for great answers. And when you look for great answers, you're able to now put new things around your thinking to grow, because you can't get to better until you get to different.
Right.
And the only way to get to different is to ask questions and learn. The people that function best in the back of the room kind of tell me that maybe they're struggling with some fear. They're struggling with being comfortable. And so that's a different, not that they can't be successful, it's a different style of coaching. That person may need more direction on feeling good about who they are. Correct. Versus the person who wants to sit directly in front of you is more about, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to put myself into gear. The other person desires to get into gear and doesn't know how.
Right.
So it's about reading the people. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you
Those
did.
are things that I watch for, though, when I think about people that I would love to coach or people that are success-driven.
And, the people that show up for class, I love how you identify the differences between people in the front, people in the back. Their intentions clearly are there, that they want to learn, and they're going through different fears and struggles.
Right.
What about the people that don't show up?
They sign up and don't show up. It's interesting. And that happens, right? That happens.
Absolutely.
It happens with our clients even sometimes, right? They're interested, they don't show up. So when people don't show up, I do the very, very best I can, and I sometimes fall flat on my face with this, is we're judging machines, right? We always make a judgment. in the first 30 seconds. You signed up, didn't show up. First thing runs through my mind is not committed.
Right.
Second thing, and not committed to me, not committed to themselves.
Correct.
Because they didn't sign up for me, they signed up for themselves. Not committed. Afraid. Afraid of change. Let's face it, we're in an industry that changes constantly.
Absolutely.
The real estate business 6 years ago, 10 years ago, wasn't where it is today. And there's a lot of people back in 2006 who bailed on the industry because if you didn't understand short sales and foreclosures, you didn't have a business. And a lot of people would not do that. They wouldn't play in that game. So when I think about not showing up, that's exactly what I think. It's not showing up.
Right.
Because if you don't show up for you, then
there's no one else.
I don't need you to show up. It's really about you not showing up. Now, having said that, some people don't show up because somebody's sick, something happened, and that's all valid, right? I think what you're talking about, though, is more about I'm excited and then I don't show up. And I think a lot of that's fear-driven. I believe that wholeheartedly. It's fear-driven, and we will avoid pain at all cost for a short-term pleasure.
We just... talking about fear, we just read The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've read that before. And there's a part of the book where it talks about thorns and how you don't simply, a lot of people, they don't simply take out the thorn, but they avoid it. And they create a system to minimize the pain, but the thorn is still in there.
Yep.
And it's amazing how our upbringing and our environment and our conditioning has blinded us from actually taking action, from taking care of that initial pain.
Right.
And we work around it.
Correct. And when we work around it, that becomes a pattern. And when you do that once, you do it twice. You do it 2 times, you do it 3 times. Yeah. And pretty soon, you're so in that groove and you're so in that pattern, you don't even realize you're in a pattern of self-destruction.
Right.
Because it becomes second nature to what you're doing.
And you built that habit.
Yeah.
So, Carl, we talked about struggles, what people are struggling with. Specifically, how would you say you can structure a way where if you're struggling with a problem or multiple problems, how do you get yourself out of the rut, so to speak?
Myself.
Correct. And who would you say you would reach out to for help?
Great. So I don't care, and you know this, I don't care where you start and where you end up. There is always a learning curve.
Absolutely.
If you're moving forward. If you don't have a learning curve and you're not struggling, you're not moving forward, right? So the great question there is, I learned early on that when I started to reach a ceiling of achievement, meaning I only know what I know, and beyond that, I don't know anything else, I know at that point I need a coach or somebody to help me get out of my own way. In fact, I like the expression, sometimes I have a hard time finding my way out of a paper bag. So I need somebody to help me find my way to a paper bag.
Right.
And that's why I have 2 coaches that I go to. And one of them is a leadership coach. Another one's a production coach. The production coach allows me to be able to hold my teams accountable.
Right.
And my leadership coach holds me accountable to my own personal growth. So I'm always, those, I love the call and I hate the call.
Right.
At the same time.
Absolutely.
Because they're always going to dump something more on you that is another challenge. And that's okay, because I choose to be in that place, because if I'm not challenged, I'm bored. And if I'm bored, I'm not producing.
Right.
So for me, it's get somebody that will truly hold you accountable. One person, 2 people, 3 people. It depends. You can do it financial accountability. You can do business accountability, spiritual accountability, if that's your choice, whatever that chooses to be.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you have 2 coaches, one for leadership and one for production. Clearly, for leadership and for production, there's specific metrics that you track. And I want to stress the importance of, just like in real estate, just like in any business, whoever's watching, there's metrics that they need to track the progress of.
Right.
Specifically for you in those 2 areas that you're being coached, what are you tracking? How do you measure if you're moving forward?
So generically speaking, if you're in real estate, it's the same thing. It's listings. It's hours gently generated. The biggest number that I think a lot of real estate agents don't track, and I think this is life or death for any team, is conversion. Because I can go out and meet 1,000 people, and if I'm not good enough to convert the leads, I have a lot of people on a list that I just scratch off. because I didn't convert them. If I got 100 people and I convert at 70% and you convert at 30, you work 2.5 times harder than I do for the same paycheck, right?
Correct.
So lead conversion is really important. Hours lead generated, the number of contacts. People ask me all the time, when did you door knock? How did you door knock? So I door knocked 4 hours a day. I didn't worry about skipping that house, picking that. It was just go do it, right? Just get out there and meet the people and then follow up. Following up is the other piece, right? And then the third piece is coaching around scripts and dialogues. Because as you know, people have a lot of great answers to a lot of things. And we go down bunny trails because we don't know how to reel the client back into the original discussion or even the lead.
Right.
So I would say those are the key benchmarks. And obviously you can take it deeper, and that is how much am I spending of my profit? Because you've probably seen real estate agents make $1 million in GCI and gross or net like $25,000.
Correct.
Because they don't know how to spend their money, or they spend all of it on other stuff or non-intelligent marketing spending.
Right.
So I would just say that from a team perspective, it's those details. And if you're not into the details, you're missing the bigger picture. You think you got it and you really don't got it.
Right.
Right. And a lot of people, and Wilson, I'm sure you've heard this, you have a team and you've had agents come in. I'm in open houses every weekend and nobody calls me back.
Right.
When I hear that, I think, are you talking to people? Oh yeah, I got the names and numbers. Okay, great. So you're pretty okay at closing for an appointment or for a number.
Correct.
Your follow-up isn't good, or you're not able to close for an appointment.
Right.
Because there's other people that are new that say, hey, I was in open house this weekend and I got 20 contacts and I got 5 appointments out of that.
Right.
It's skill-based.
Absolutely.
People get their license in real estate and they just think that they can go and just do it at a high level. Could you imagine if you became a doctor and you got your license, put it on the wall and just started operating on people? I wouldn't lay there. I wouldn't lay there with that, right? You got to do some studying, you got to do some learning, some interning. So the accountability piece is around all those metrics. In leadership, the accountability is on time. Time spent, and where my best time spent is a day in order to hit metrics at a higher level. Because obviously in leadership, it's growing a region of offices that have teams. Right. So it's a 30,000 level measurement rather than 5,000.
Correct.
And it still comes down to the same thing. Top 20%. Top 20% is people.
Right.
It's recruiting. It's getting the right people in the right jobs so that they can produce. Right. So it's almost the same metrics, just at a different level. I don't know if that helps your...
I think that definitely does help.
It all wraps up into tracking and accountability. If you don't track and you're not accountable, then you're AWOL, and that means no production.
What do you say to the people that fear tracking their numbers?
It's the only way you'll ever know if you're winning or losing.
Absolutely.
When you go to business planning clinic and I'll say, hey, how many homes do you want to sell this year? More than last year. Okay, how much is that? 5, 10, 100? And then you got people that come in all gangbusters and they sold 10 and next year they want to sell 40. And the first question out of my mouth is, how?
Right.
How are you going to do 40? Are you going to just do 40 yourself? And then you ask them how, and a lot of people have no idea where to start.
Right.
Well, the first thing is a plan.
Correct.
Second thing is skills. I need some skills, right, that I don't have now. Because you know what Gary says, right? If you do the same thing over and over again, you get the same thing. And not only that, if you don't change what you did to get here, you'll never get to here. Because it's a different set of principles and practices.
Absolutely. As they say, we get to this stage where we are because of the skills and the time that we've committed, and going to whatever the next level is going to require a different you, right?
Yeah, and you need a breakdown to break through. And I don't mean laying on the floor, kicking, screaming, and crying. Sometimes it is. That? Sometimes it is. However, a lot of times it's simply a light bulb goes off and says, wow, I missed a very critical road here on this journey.
Right.
If you never put yourself in the light, though, of new info, getting uncomfortable, having to track and do things you don't like to do, you never get the light bulb. So the person that never tracks never knows where they are. It's kind of like an airplane pilot that's flying a plane and just hoping that somebody tells them where to land.
Right.
They have a plan, right? They know exactly where they are. They course correct. So tracking is critical.
Even with autopilot, it needs some manual maneuvering.
Well, you want your business on autopilot to some degree,
Correct.
and yet you still somebody has to man the systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not any different at all.
So, Carl,
Yeah.
what was your biggest flop or failure you've gone through in your life, business or personal, that you would be willing to share?
Let me think on that.
Sure.
It's interesting because we've joked about this before.
Right.
I don't spend a lot of time driving, looking in the rearview mirror.
Absolutely
However, where we all get to is about where we came from, right?
Absolutely.
So I think what I would tell you in that is taking on too much and feeling like I was the ultimate be all end all for everybody. And we all know that's not possible. Part of that's our personality. Sometimes it's ego.
Right.
And sometimes we fall flat on our face because of that. And I would say that as I was going from foundation in my business to momentum and going up that ladder to mastery,
Right.
I felt like I had to have constant control. And as a result of that, I lost business because I wouldn't leverage where I wasn't as effective as somebody else.
Right.
So I think my biggest flop in business was, I think I talked about it earlier a little bit, not gathering people. It caused me to lose business. And think about an average commission. Right. California commission is high. If you miss $25,000 commissions, that's over $100,000, and you miss it or lose it because you're not leveraged, because you think you can do it all.
Right.
And I think I'm speaking to a lot of driven people right now this morning. And if you're a driven person, stop pretending you can do it all. Because I think that's where I met my biggest demise, was I lost money. And then what ends up happening is you lose people because people don't feel like they're empowered when you have to control everything.
Right.
I think sometimes control really causes us to fall flat. And when we start to recognize the value other people bring and that I can be best at what I'm best at will drive my business, then we're in a better space. So I would say in that very third or fourth year of my business, in my sales business, was probably the area that I feel like I took the biggest smack on. And it was a big eye opener. Lost money, lost people.
Breakdown before breakthrough, right?
Because of me, right? And it would have continued if somebody didn't say, time out, you need to reevaluate your strengths and your opportunity areas. And when you don't have a strength in an area that's an opportunity, go get it.
Right.
Go find somebody that can do that.
Being uncomfortable working on it.
And once you find that person, it's great, because then you just push everything off and you never think about it anymore, because that's what they do best. That's what they do best.
And you get your time back.
And you get your time back to do what you do best.
Thank you for sharing that. And Carl, how would you define success? What does success mean to you?
You know, that's a great question, because it's one of those questions that, people say, oh, that's such a cliche question. And yet in reality, for me, it's changed a lot. When I first got into real estate, it was all about, I want to make as much money as I can possibly make.
Right.
And that's okay, right? Because money helps us achieve the things we want and desire.
Get our time back, right?
Of course, right? At this stage of the game, money hasn't gone away, because money still pays for all the things I need and want. However, the biggest thing for me now is when my head hits the pillow at night, I want to feel fulfilled and satisfied that I did my very best that day to affect the people that I touched and I intended to touch. And I mean that sincerely, because for me, I wouldn't coach or teach or train or even lead in a region or in an office if people weren't a big piece of that puzzle. So for me, that real success is I'm making changes and I'm helping people succeed. And in the process, I'm funding my life, my perfect life, right? So it's kind of two parts. However, you can make a lot of money and not put your head on the pillow and feel successful or satisfied. I did that in my last 6 years of corporate America. Hated it and did it because I needed the money to pay bills. So I guess I would tell people, find that thing that makes you really buzz and tick and do it well, and then the money will come.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. My pleasure.
And Carl, one more question.
Sure.
What are some actionable steps or actions that you could share with the audience that they could take at this very moment that could make a difference in their lives, whether they're in real estate or whether they're starting a new business? What are some things that they should start doing?
Learn. Be a forever learner. Don't arrive. People that arrive miss the boat. They really and honestly do. We see it. As I coach Bold, a lot of people that are top producers never show up anymore because they got it. And the mistake is they really don't got it, right?
Right.
None of us ever got it totally. So stay learning, be a learner. Don't be afraid of change because change happens all the time. Don't be afraid of systems. Right? Jump in and just start. Some people, they have to have the perfect flyer, the perfect system, the perfect everything. And just go do it. Just start. Wilson, when I started knocking on doors, I didn't know anything about real estate. I don't know if I shared with you my very, very first story. I came back from Mega Camp sitting in the front row, and Gary Keller was saying, we're in a shifted market. If you don't have an escrow, do you have anything else to do right now than go lead generate?
Right.
Of course, we know that's the truth in any market, right? However, I went out, knocked the second door I knocked on. Lady holding a telephone, baby, toddler, 2 Labrador retrievers. I was thinking, why did you even answer the door, right? She did. And after I got talking with her, because I knew my statistics, she was like, wow, we need to sell our house. And we're excited to do this. And I need you to talk to my husband when he comes home from work. Well, I was elated and sold anything. She says to me, however, I just got to let you know, one of my best friends is in real estate. And I'm thinking, that's what everybody told me that people would say. And she did. And then she said to me, however, I don't really want to list with her because she's new and she's never sold anything. And I'm standing at the front door like, neither have I. I didn't say that. I just said, I can appreciate that.
Right.
I got the listing, and I didn't get the listing because I had experience. I got the listing because I showed up ready, motivated, and prepared.
Right.
And if those are the 3 things that I would tell anybody going into any business, self-employed, is be ready, be motivated, and be prepared.
Right.
And that's all skill-based other than your desire.
Right.
Desire has to come naturally. Nobody can force desire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I think everyone could relate to their stories and the one that you just shared.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of what do you say afterwards? And I think the key thing is your intentions are good, and that's why you're out there.
Yeah.
You're looking to help people.
Show up.
Exactly.
Right? It's who you're becoming.
Exactly.
Every day, yeah.
So, Carl, let's do a quick round.
Okay.
I have 5 words. I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Just one word?
I'm going to give you one word.
And I have to give one word answer?
Whatever answer you feel is
okay.
That comes up.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. The first one is fear.
Failure.
Uncomfortableness.
Growth.
Wealth.
Dreams.
Leadership.
Vision.
Winning.
Satisfaction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to thank you again for sharing with your knowledge with our audience, and it's going to be very helpful, I know, for them.
Cool. Wilson, I was flattered.
Thank
I
you.
seriously am flattered that you had me come to your launch of this. That was really, really great. It made me feel
So
good.
we're gonna do an encore.
Yeah, anytime. I want you to feel free to call me.
All right, we have that
anytime.
on film. Anytime.
Anytime. Great.
Thank you.